The city slept, streets were dark, but evil lurked. In the shadows, they prowled, men sworn to protect but hungry for more. They were the law, they were above it, they were corrupt. Their target? Anyone vulnerable, anyone easy. They preyed on fear, they exploited weakness, they were predators, but tonight, they chose the wrong prey. The air hung heavy in the precinct. Cigarette smoke swirled, laughter echoed off the walls. These were not guardians, these were wolves. Sergeant Miller, a hulking figure with a cruel grin, led the pack. His eyes glinted with greed. His pockets bulged with ill-gotten gains. Beside him sat Davis, younger, eager to please. He craved Miller's approval. He craved the power. Across town, Michael worked late. An immigrant, he struggled to build a life. He saved every penny. He believed in honesty. He believed in the American dream. But tonight, that dream would become a nightmare. He locked up, weary but content. As he walked home, he felt a presence. Two figures emerged from the darkness. Their badges glinted in the dim light. Just a routine check, sir. But Michael sensed something was wrong. Very wrong. Miller and Davis shoved Michael into an alley. Rough hands searched him, emptying his pockets. The alley was narrow, with walls that seemed to close in, amplifying the sense of entrapment. The dim light cast eerie shadows, making the scene even more menacing. Michael's mind raced, trying to recall every piece of advice he'd ever heard about dealing with corrupt cops.
"Looks like you're having a bad night," Miller sneered. "Maybe we can help." His voice dripped with sarcasm, and his eyes gleamed with a malicious intent. The power dynamic was clear, and Miller was enjoying every moment of it.
Michael's heart pounded. Each beat echoed in his ears, a constant reminder of his vulnerability. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, heightening his senses. The cold night air felt even colder against his skin, and the rough texture of the brick wall behind him pressed into his back. He knew what this was. He'd heard the stories of people who disappeared, of bribes and threats, of a system that was supposed to protect but often did the opposite. The tales were whispered in hushed tones, warnings passed down from one generation to the next.
"I have rights," Michael stammered. "I demand a lawyer." His voice wavered, but there was a steely determination in his eyes. He wasn't going to go down without a fight. He had to stand his ground, even if it felt like the ground was slipping away beneath him.
Miller laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. It was the kind of laugh that sent chills down your spine, a sound devoid of any real amusement. It was a laugh that spoke of power and control, of a man who believed he was untouchable.
"You have the right to remain silent," he growled. "Anything you say—" His voice trailed off, but the threat was clear. The words were a formality, a thin veneer of legality over a situation that was anything but.
But Michael was not what they expected. He had a secret, and a plan. Beneath the fear, there was a spark of defiance. He had been preparing for this moment, gathering information, making connections. He knew the risks, but he also knew the potential rewards. This was his chance to turn the tables, to expose the corruption that had plagued his community for far too long, and he was ready to take it. Michael reached into his pocket, feigning panic. "Please," he begged, "take anything you want." He pulled out a small, worn notebook. "Just let me go." Miller snatched it, eyes greedy. "What's this?" he muttered. "Some kind of code?" Davis peered over his shoulder. "Looks like gibberish to me," he said. Miller scoffed. "This is important," he growled. "I can feel it." He shoved Michael back. "Get out of here," he snarled, "and keep your mouth shut." Michael disappeared into the night, his figure blending seamlessly with the shadows. The burner phone in his hand was his lifeline, a tool that had seen countless covert operations. Each step he took was calculated, each breath measured. He was a man on a mission, driven by a purpose that few could understand. A ghost of a smile played on his lips, a fleeting expression that hinted at the satisfaction of a plan coming together. This was no ordinary night. It was the culmination of years of work, of sacrifices made in the name of justice. The smile was not one of joy, but of grim determination. The notebook was no diary, it was a meticulously kept record, a testament to his relentless pursuit of the truth. Each page was filled with cryptic notes, codes, and evidence that painted a damning picture of Miller's crimes. It was a puzzle that only he could solve, a burden that he alone carried. It was his life's work. Years of meticulous notes, evidence, proof of Miller's crimes. The pages were stained with coffee rings and smudged ink, signs of countless sleepless nights spent piecing together the puzzle. Every detail, every scrap of information was a step closer to justice. He had sacrificed so much, but the end was finally in sight. He had been waiting for this moment. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a mix of anxiety and excitement that coursed through his veins. He knew that one wrong move could unravel everything, but he was ready. He had prepared for this, trained for this. The moment of truth was at hand. He ducked into a phone booth, his movements swift and practiced. The booth was a relic of a bygone era, but it served its purpose well. It was a place where he could make the call without being traced. A sanctuary in the midst of chaos. He took a deep breath, steadying himself for what was to come. Dialing a number he knew by heart. "They took the bait," he whispered. "The trap is set." On the other end, a gruff voice chuckled. "Good work, son." The voice was familiar, a mentor who had guided him through the darkest times. This was their moment, the culmination of their efforts. The plan was in motion and there was no turning back. "Now, let's bring these bastards down." The words were a rallying cry, a declaration of war against the forces of corruption. They had the evidence, the plan, and the resolve to see it through. The night was dark, but the dawn of justice was on the horizon. Together, they would unmask the wolf and bring him to justice. The next morning, the precinct buzzed with activity. Unmarked cars swarmed the building. Federal agents, faces grim, poured through the doors. Miller watched in stunned silence as his world crumbled. The notebook. It was all there. His crimes, meticulously documented, his victims, their stories ready to be told. He looked at Davis, his young protege, fear etched on his face. They were trapped, and they knew it. Section 8. Justice, served cold. The trial was swift, the evidence, overwhelming. Witnesses, emboldened by Michael's courage, came forward. They told their stories. They exposed the truth. Miller and Davis, stripped of their badges, faced the consequences of their actions. The judge, his voice echoing in the silent courtroom, delivered the verdict. Guilty. Justice so long denied had been served. But the fight was far from over. Section 9. Whispers of Truth. News of the scandal spread like wildfire. The city, once blind to the corruption, now saw it everywhere. Whispers of other victims, other crimes filled the air. The police department, once a symbol of power, now reeked of betrayal. The people demanded change. They demanded accountability. They demanded justice for all those who had suffered in silence. And slowly, painfully, change began to come. Section 10. The Price of Power. Miller and Davis, now inmates in the very system they had exploited, had plenty of time to contemplate their crimes. The power they had craved had consumed them, leaving them hollow and broken. Their days were filled with regret, their nights haunted by the faces of their victims. They had learned a harsh lesson: power corrupts. And justice, though it may be slow, will always find a way. Section 11. Dawn of Redemption. In the heart of the city, as the first light of dawn began to pierce through the darkness, a new chapter was unfolding. The skyline, once shrouded in shadows, now glimmered with the promise of a fresh start. The city, with its towering buildings and sprawling streets, was on the brink of transformation. Michael, hailed as a hero, watched as the city began to heal. He stood tall, his eyes scanning the streets below where life was slowly returning to normal. The hustle and bustle of the city, once a cacophony of chaos, now seemed like a symphony of hope. People moved with purpose, their faces reflecting a newfound determination. The scars of corruption remained, etched into the very fabric of the city. Buildings bore the marks of past battles, and streets whispered tales of betrayal. But amidst the remnants of a troubled past, there was a palpable sense of renewal. The city was like a wounded warrior, scarred but unbroken, ready to rise again. He had risked everything to expose the truth. Michael's journey had been fraught with danger, his every step shadowed by threats. Yet, he had pressed on, driven by an unwavering belief in justice. His courage had ignited a spark, a beacon of hope for those who had long been silenced. And in doing so, he had given a voice to the voiceless. The oppressed, who had once cowered in fear, now stood tall, their voices echoing through the city. They had found strength in unity, their collective resolve a testament to the power of truth. Michael had not just been a hero, he had been a catalyst for change. The city had been through a dark night. But dawn had broken. The transition from night to day was more than just a change in the sky. It was a metaphor for the city's journey. The darkness that had once enveloped the city was giving way to light, and with it, a sense of hope and possibility. And with it came the promise of a new day. The sun, rising steadily over the horizon, bathed the city in a warm golden glow. It was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild and reclaim what had been lost. The promise of a new day was not just a hope, it was a commitment to a better future, a day where justice would prevail. The city's legal system, once riddled with corruption, was now a symbol of integrity. The scales of justice, once tipped in favor of the powerful, were now balanced. The people had faith that justice would be served, that the wrongs of the past would be righted. A day where the wolves in sheep's clothing would no longer roam free. The corrupt figures who had once manipulated the system were now facing the consequences of their actions. The city was no longer a playground for the deceitful. It was a place where truth and justice reigned supreme. The dawn of redemption had arrived, and with it the promise of a brighter, more just future.